Hello and welcome to Between Sets with Church. Thank you so much for joining us today as we are at the Edenvale Aerodrome with Mr. David Hadfield. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, Ian. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. I got to say, this is probably the coolest shoot we've done in a long time. This is absolutely perfect shot to do this. So tell us a little bit more about the hangar, if you don't mind.
Well, this is a museum
Yep.
at the Edenvale Aerodrome, and that's a model full-size of the Avro Aero, that iconic piece of Canadian aviation history. So it's just wonderful that the owner of this airport, Milan Krupa, has created this space for people and for events like this. And there are some flying historical outfits here as well. So this is quite a nexus of historic flying.
Yeah, it's quite cool. So this has been a pretty busy week for you as well. RCAF is celebrating 100 years. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your involvement with that?
Yeah, well, I'm a chief pilot for a collection of aircraft in Ottawa, Gatineau Airport, and we fly a Spitfire, Hurricane, and a Mustang in a 3-ship formation. So, that sounds pretty simple, but there's a lot of coordination and a lot of background work for each one of those displays that you get to fly, and it kind of takes over my life in the summer.
There's a huge historical difference in what you're flying as well. Not only do you pretty well fly everything, but you've got to deal with the gear, the mechanisms of changes and everything else.
Yes.
Is it easy to adapt to, or I couldn't imagine it would be?
Well, I used to fly a Tiger Moth, like the aircraft right behind us here, at this airport, and it kind of directed me into the path that eventually led to flying a Spitfire. But those three that we're flying are original in every way, and we have to fly them just like they did in World War II. But anyway, this being the 100th anniversary of the RCAF, we're tasked for a whole number of displays. So busy summer coming.
Yeah. Let's go back to your earlier roots, family life, and the beginning. Was music, I'm sure flight somehow, there had to be planes flying around everywhere at some point, but at what point did music kind of come into your childhood, or did it come a little bit later in life?
I grew up in a musical family. My brothers and sisters, there are 5 of us. Whenever we get together at the cottage or wherever, there's music, campfires and
I think I saw a video of that, yeah.
So we all like to play, we all like to sing. And I didn't grow up with formal music. We didn't go to concerts and things, but it was a farm. And, Sunday dinner with the grandparents over, when the dishes were cleaned up, Mom would take us all into the parlor where the piano was, and she would play. And my mom has a wonderful natural ear. And so she would sing all her favorites, and none of our kids' favorites. There was no pop songs from the late 60s or 70s, but their songs and the grandparents' songs, and we just sang. So the tradition I came from was farm, family, and tradesmen, and making music for yourself. I didn't really know anyone in the musical genre or the professional side of things at all until I was in my 30s, really.
So it was a bit of a later start for you then in some ways.
Yes, I ended up as an airline pilot, so it was a very hardware, there was a big left brain, right brain split, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, music and flying do go together. It's, you're tired of one, you're ready for the other. And they are a complete left brain, right brain split. I noticed that in my dad's life. He was an airline pilot as well, but ran a farm on the side. Although maybe it's the other way around. The farm was the prime enterprise for all of us growing up. But music and a technical life are a good balance.
Yeah. How does that, speaking of left-right side with the brain, how do they complement each other? Because, like you say, they're coming from two opposites, and you managed to morph them together. Was it an easy process, or?
It's just, I've been around airplanes since I was a baby, and around music since, same thing. And it just, both halves of my brain had to grow, right? And I think you're a more whole person if you can do some artistic enterprise as well as a technical thing.
Yeah. A lot of your songs, too, almost all of them that I've heard, they're stories. They are pure what folk music is. It's storytelling. And do you find doing the music first, or does the story come before the music and you kind of put it together?
The story is the hard part. You need an idea, right? So it's all very well to noodle around with an instrument, but you need an idea. And once you get the idea, then I write both the melody and the words together. But I grew up enjoying story songs, because a lot of those, 20s and 30s songs are story songs. But my parents were part of that, or at least fans of the folk revival in 1959, 60, 61 with the Kingston Trio and all the way to the Mamas and the Papas and Peter, Paul, and Mary. And so we grew up with those story songs, the classical folk tradition, but brought forward into a pop medium. And we really liked it. We liked the funny songs, of the Kingston Trio. And then later on, the Harry Chapin and Jim Croce kind of songs that really tell a story. So those were strong musical influences on my siblings.
Speaking of stories, we're going to listen to The Crossing shortly. Do you want to talk a little bit about the story, lyrics behind that one?
The Crossing is an encapsulation of 6 years of my life. At that time, I was a captain on the Airbus 330, and just with the route structure, that airplane is particularly suited economically to go back and forth across the North Atlantic. So that's what I did, 5 to 6 times a month. And it's very, very fatiguing, very draining, because it's an all-nighter over there. At the beginning of the song, I can see Polaris over my shoulder, and then you watch the stars come up. But then there's usually it's daily service, so it's just a 24-hour slip, and you bring the airplane, the airplane that people bring you, 24 hours later you come back. But they're 6 hours ahead, right? So you go from a late night to a early morning, you get 1 or 2 days off, maybe 3, and then you do it all over again. So you can never get used to the pattern, and it really is tiring.
I can imagine. Yeah, yes. I mean, just flying to Europe alone it takes time to adjust. But
and like the song says, it's black water down there. When you leave the coast of Newfoundland, the folks in the back are happy and having a good meal, I hope, and something to drink, watching a movie. But up in the cockpit, you are very aware of the coast. And there's no way anybody's going to ditch in the winter North Atlantic successfully. Yeah. So you're aware of alternate airports like Iceland and the Azores and how close Ireland is getting the entire time. So there is a certain nervous tension that goes with that. And for that period, there were only 2 pilots. We didn't have a relief pilot, too. So later on, I got more senior. I moved up to a larger airplane, the Boeing 777, and I started flying China routes. Which was less fatiguing because it's a different schedule. But before I left the North Atlantic, I wanted to grab it. When it was fresh in my mind, I wanted to sort of create a song which is a briefing to myself of what that was like that would last.
Yeah. Let's have a listen to it, actually, if you don't mind.
Polaris over my shoulder as I rise into the night. I'll cross the dark Atlantic and land in dawn's gray light. The Dipper rotates slowly, Orion rises high. And I can tell how long I've sat by their angle in the sky. The clearance comes from Gander that checks each 10 degrees. I can see track Victor by the lights preceding me. And here I sit in the captain's chair as Newfoundland goes behind. I cannot see black water, but it's always on my mind. And all my bones are a part of this ship till we reach the Irish shore, like the captains who came before. All the captains who came before. We make the call to Shanwick and doze till 20 west, drinking endless coffee, many hours until we rest. We see the lights of Shannon, the stars begin to fade. We pull out charts and brief ourselves for Heathrow's promenade. Descend and hold at Ockham, the ILS awaits. Touchdown in the fog and mist, shut down at the gate. And here I sit in the captain's chair as Newfoundland goes behind. I cannot see black water, but it's always on my mind. And all my bones are a part of this ship till we reach the Irish shore, like the captains who came before. All the captains who came before. Oh, the early morning traffic is thick as we ride into London town. It's late, yet it's early when we sleep. Get up in the afternoon, walk in Regent's Park, happy hour pints, then out to eat. And here I sit in the captain's chair as Ireland goes behind. I cannot see black water, but it's always on my mind. And all my bones are a part of this ship till we come to Labrador, like the captains who came before. All the captains who came before.
That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for performing that. That's great. I wanted to talk a little bit about Songs from a Tin Can. Very interesting background behind that, because if I understand it right, it was all recorded off Earth. So some of my engineering producing friends are going to wonder how this actually ever happened. But can you give us some insight onto that?
Yeah, that idea originally came from Paul Mills. If Chris is going up in space, I had already done an album with Paul, so he came up with the idea. Geez, why doesn't Chris do an album while he's up there? And I said, hey, that's a good idea. Let me talk to Chris. And Chris said, yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that. So he was really, this was about, 6 months before his launch. And he didn't have a lot of time then to be writing songs. So Chris asked me if I would help him put together a portfolio of songs that had some sort of significance for someone in space or off the planet. And, if he didn't use those songs and he wrote a dozen new ones up there, fine and dandy, all to the good. But in any case, I wanted him to have a folder of songs, because I knew, since he's such a magnificent communicator, that when he got up there, he would be tasked, and he would, enter millions of people's consciousness by communicating the wonders of getting off the planet, which he did. So that album is recorded, all the vocals, well, his vocal and his guitar is pure from space. right? And he insisted that that be in the final mix. So he sent that down to Earth, and then it was put in a studio and mixed with, studio musicians and a producer and everything to come up. But he wanted it to be true to the experience of having recorded it up there. And he did it all in his spare time, and he should have been going to bed.
That's awesome. Caroline's another song that we're going to listen to shortly. You want to talk a little bit about that one as well?
Yeah, well, a lot of my songs are about the bush and the north and wilderness and wandering away. And some of them are about contemporary experiences, but I have some historical story songs. And one of them is Caroline. And of course, in our Canadian consciousness, we're aware of the voyageurs and, paddling up the river and singing their songs and smoking their pipes and all that great fur trade stuff. But I wondered what it would have been like for the wife of one of those voyageurs left behind there in the riverbank west of Montreal with a couple of kids grabbing her skirts and no money, nothing but debts, and that's the story of Caroline. So it's set back in 1807, but Chris really liked that song. And he decided to include it as a space song, and he was able to just change a couple of words, and all of a sudden it was relevant to someone now who's leaving home. And I was really tickled by that.
Yeah. Let's have a listen to that, actually.
Caroline is on her own since her husband has gone away. Such a long time ago, 1807, early May, she watched him paddle up the river at Lachine and misses him much more than she can say. 2 children barely walking and another on the way. Caroline is on her own on the farm among the trees. Mind the field, tend the yard, work the garden on hands and knees. Her friends are good to her, her family isn't far. Monsieur Curé speaks of La Vierge Marie, but her husband is on the water, and she wonders what he sees. In the winter she hears stories from the men who roam the land, but she'd like to see it with her own eyes. She'd like to know and understand. Caroline is on her own, and the pains are coming fast, and her sisters are there to help her, but they've been crying. It cannot last. She seems to break her bonds and lift beyond the room, and soars away to see him in a flash, and a journey so newly started meets a journey that's come to pass. She seems to break her bonds and lift beyond the room, and soars away to see him in a flash, and a journey so newly started meets a journey that's come to pass.
That was awesome. Thank you once again.
Thanks.
In Canada, a lot of your songs lyrically are very Canadiana. It's roots. It's very how do I describe it? Is the Canadiana part important to you? Because it seems to reflect quite a bit in a lot of your songs.
Yeah, I like exploring us, and sometimes I think we Canadians take ourselves for granted, and we don't consider ourselves as great as we should, you know. But I just like telling stories about things I know, and I am a Canadian, so that comes through. That door got opened for me by listening to the music of Stan Rogers, particularly, right?
Yeah, you mentioned Stan earlier. Yeah,
very big musical influence, and so yes, I've written quite a few songs about the North and the bush. The In Canada song, is if you wanted to talk about that, yeah, that was fun because I had the framework of the song figured out, but I wanted to write a song about the whole country, but I didn't want to grab the big cliches of, you know, the Mounties and moose and
the typical
Eskimos,
beavers,
all that sort of thing, right? Igloos. So I wanted something that were the little code words, phrases, experiences that Canadians know about, but nobody else does. Like plugging in your car while you're wearing Sorel boots and, you know, butter tarts and Nanaimo bars and 24th of May and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that song really does speak from one Canadian to another. And it was amusing to write because I would just open my ears and look at the newspaper and grab the little Canadianisms. It's fun.
Yeah. Any artists that you'd ever thought of working with or performing with that stand out? We talked Stan Rogers, but obviously that cannot happen, unfortunately. But
well, here in Barrie, where I live, I played for many years on stage with Jerry Levine, a fiddle player, friend of yours as well.
Yeah,
and
great friend.
I like to play with him anywhere and any time, right?
Yeah.
But we did play in pubs for quite a while, Celtic music, and bringing my own songs into that too, which is a fun way to do it. But one of the Canadian bands that would be fun to play with would be Great Big Sea.
Yeah.
Just to be part of that high energy experience.
Yeah.
Here's a song that folks from Barrie might recognize. Not long ago I accepted a job, moved to Toronto, the great urban blob, bought me a house to the north of the town, and early each morning go down to the 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. To say that it's friendly is totally false. The 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. Dancing with partners you hate. In winter the streamers come off of the lake, and those who are dancing all learn how to skate. They spin and they weave on their way to the town, but never, oh never slow down for the 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. To say that it's friendly is totally false. The 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. I wish I was driving a tank I've tried driving early, I've tried driving late. The crowd is awaiting, it's always my fate. I have only ego, I don't have a soul. One more Fruit Loop in the bowl of the 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. To say that it's friendly is totally false. The 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. Thank God that most are unarmed. A driver I saw was a marvel to me. He seemed to be driving miraculously. He worked his computer, he talked on the phone, but never once looked at the road. Oh, the 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. To say that it's friendly is totally false. The 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. I'm balding as fast as my tires. One Friday evening I lingered at work. I get absent-minded, sometimes I'm a jerk. The highway was blocked with Muskoka-bound cars. I wish I was driving on Mars, not the 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. To say that it's friendly is totally false. The 400 Waltz, the 400 Waltz. I wish I was driving a tank. And thank God that most are unarmed. I'm balding as fast as my tires, and I wish I was driving on Mars.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. I greatly appreciate it. And,
thanks for the opportunity.
All the best with everything else you got coming up, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Great.
Yeah,
Looking
thanks
forward
again,
to it.
Dave. Appreciate it.
Canada. What's with Canada? We got great big cities, but a lot of trees and rocks. Yeah, the winter's cold here. Wear 2 pairs of socks. There's half the world's fresh water to paddle your canoe or camp along the shoreline. It's what we like to do in Canada. Ooh, I'm living in Canada. Float my boat in Canada. Oh, bait my hook in Canada. We tend to do things different. We each have our routine. Some of us eat kubasa, some of us poutine.
Oh, j'aime poutine.
But we have traditions that help us stick together. Our milk comes in a bag, and mosquitoes eat at leisure. Playing in a snowsuit, the true north strong and free. Hockey night on Saturday, there on CBC.
Or now on Sportsnet.